The night had fallen heavy across the Turner Ranch, wrapping the land in a deep, uneasy stillness. The lantern Caleb had hung inside the barn swung lightly on its hook, casting thin shadows over stacks of hay and the worn wood of the stalls. The horses stirred occasionally, their hooves shifting in the dirt, but otherwise, everything was quiet. Caleb leaned against a post, his body aching from another day's labor. He'd mended fences, wrangled stubborn cattle, and hauled water until his back screamed. Yet for all his exhaustion, he couldn't bring himself to turn in. Something gnawed at him, a tension in the air he couldn't name. The sound reached him faintly at first, not the familiar rustle of the wind in the sagebrush, nor the skitter of mice in the rafters. This was something softer, hesitant. He straightened, his senses sharpening. He was a man used to the silence of open land, and when something broke it, he noticed. His hand drifted instinctively to the revolver at his hip as he listened, waiting. There it was again, a shuffle, a quick breath caught in a throat. Caleb pushed himself off the post and turned toward the barn door. The lantern light stretched far enough to reveal her, a figure standing on the threshold, framed in shadow. His jaw clenched. It wasn't a man, nor a drifter, nor one of the ranch hands. It was a young woman. She was barefoot, her dress torn at the hem and along one sleeve, her hair wild as if she'd been running. Dirt streaked her cheeks, but even through the grime, he could see the desperation in her eyes. She clutched something to her chest, bundled tight in a scrap of cloth. Caleb didn't speak right away. He simply studied her, the set of her shoulders, the tremor in her hands. Finally, his voice broke the silence, deep and rough from disuse. "Who are you, and why are you here?" She flinched at the sound, her lips parting as though the words themselves cut her. For a heartbeat, he thought she'd bolt, like a spooked mare. But instead, she stepped into the barn, just far enough that the lantern glow fell over her. Her eyes glistened, her chest heaving as she tried to steady herself. "Please," she whispered, "I didn't know where else to go." The plea hung in the air, fragile as glass. Caleb eased his grip on the revolver, though he didn't move closer yet. He'd seen beggars, runaways, and thieves alike, he knew better than to trust quickly. But something about the way her voice cracked, the way her whole body seemed to be bracing for rejection, made him pause. His gaze dropped to the bundle she clung to. It shifted slightly as her arms tightened. A corner of the cloth slipped just enough for the lantern light to catch on what lay inside. Metal, sharp, and wet, a knife. Its blade was stained, the dark sheen of blood unmistakable. Caleb's stomach tightened, and his hand twitched back toward his gun. Her eyes widened, panicked at his reaction. She shook her head, holding the bundle tighter against herself. Don't pull it away," she said in a hoarse whisper, her voice breaking. The words stopped him cold. He had expected anger, or threat, or even silence. But not begging. He froze, his hand hovering near his weapon, his mind racing. She wasn't raising the knife at him, she was clutching it as though it were the only thread tethering her to life itself. Slowly, carefully, Caleb lowered his hand from the revolver. "What happened?" he asked, his tone shifting, softer now. Her throat worked as she swallowed, eyes darting like a cornered animal's. Tears spilled, streaking paths through the dirt on her face. "He came after me," she said, voice trembling. "Said I was his to take. I told him no. I fought him. I didn't mean." Her words faltered as sobs choked her. "I stabbed him. I don't know if he's dead, but I couldn't stop. I just ran." Caleb's chest tightened as he listened. He had heard stories before, about men who prowled the saloons and back alleys, men who believed women were theirs by right. Out here on the edge of the frontier, law was often just a word, and justice depended on who held the gun. She staggered, her knees buckling, and he reached out instinctively to catch her. The moment his hand touched her arm, she flinched violently, almost wrenching away. But she didn't. Her body shook beneath his grip, her skin cold despite the heat of the barn. "Easy now," he murmured, steadying her. "You're safe here." Her eyes lifted to his, wide and searching, as though she wanted to believe him but couldn't yet. Her hands still clung to the knife, knuckles white with strain. "I won't take it from you," he said, holding her gaze. "Not unless you want me to. You fought for yourself. That takes courage." The barn grew silent again except for the soft sounds of her sobs and the restless shifting of the horses. She breathed in ragged gasps, still shaking, still clutching the blade. Caleb let her stand there, let her keep her grip. Forcing it from her would break her completely, he knew. Her lips moved again, barely audible, as though repeating the only words keeping her anchored. "Don't pull it away, please." Caleb swallowed hard, his own chest tightening with a strange ache he hadn't felt in years. He was a man hardened by loss, by loneliness, by endless work under the sun. Yet here he stood, facing a girl who had clawed her way out of terror and blood, begging him for one simple mercy. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, he felt his hands tremble. He set the lantern down on the ground, the light steadying as if to bear witness. And in that moment, he made his choice, not as a rancher, not as a man wary of strangers, but as someone who could not turn away. Whoever she was, whatever storm followed her, he would stand with her. The first gray light of dawn spread across the plains, pushing back the night with a quiet, stubborn glow. The Turner Ranch sat hushed beneath the morning sky, its fences stretching long and crooked against the horizon. Inside the small house, the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and wood smoke. Caleb moved with the deliberate calm of a man who had seen storms before, though this one was unlike any he'd faced. Clara sat at his table, her small frame hunched forward, shoulders still tense as if the walls might suddenly collapse around her. The knife lay on the table's edge, clean but close enough for her fingers to reach. She hadn't let it out of her sight. Caleb set a steaming mug in front of her, his movements quiet, almost careful. "Drink," he said, "you'll need your strength." Her hand hovered over the cup, but she didn't lift it right away. Her eyes flicked up to his face, searching, suspicious, like she couldn't quite understand why he hadn't thrown her out or marched her straight to the sheriff. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice raw, edged with both fear and confusion. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed over his chest. His gaze was steady, unwavering. "Because I know the kind of man you were running from. And I know the law out here doesn't always give a damn about what's right. They'd see the blood before they ever asked what he did to deserve it." Her lip trembled, her eyes watering again. She glanced at the knife, shame and guilt flickering across her face. "If he's dead," she whispered, "they'll hang me." Caleb's jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. He looked at her for a long moment, taking in the way her fingers shook, the hollow look in her eyes, the exhaustion stamped into every line of her posture. Finally, he spoke. "If he's dead, then it was him or you. No decent soul would call that murder." Clara blinked, her breath hitching. For the first time, something fragile sparked in her eyes, hope, or at least the faint outline of it. She reached for the cup at last and lifted it, her hands trembling so badly she had to steady it with both palms. She drank in small sips, and each swallow seemed to give her back a sliver of strength. But the fragile peace didn't last long. The ground began to tremble with the distant thud of hooves. Caleb heard it before she did, and his head snapped toward the window. Dust rose along the horizon, 3 riders cutting across the land at a swift pace. His chest went cold. Trouble had found them sooner than he expected. Clara saw the shadow cross his face and set the cup down with a soft clink. "They're here, aren't they?" Her voice quivered, the old terror rushing back to her eyes. Caleb straightened, moving to the wall where his rifle leaned. He checked the chamber, his movements practiced, sharp. "Stay inside," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, don't let go of that knife. You hear me?" She nodded, though her chin trembled. The riders came fast, pulling up in a spray of dirt outside the porch. Caleb stepped out, filling the doorway with his broad frame. His revolver sat easy on his hip, his rifle propped nearby, but his eyes were the true weapon, cold, hard, unflinching. The man in front, scar running jagged down his cheek, called out with a sneer. "Turner, we're looking for a girl. She came this way." His voice carried the arrogance of someone used to taking what he wanted. Caleb didn't move, didn't blink. "Plenty of folks pass through here," he replied, his tone flat, guarded. "What makes you think I'd know about her?" The scarred man leaned forward in the saddle, his hand brushing the butt of his pistol. "Because you're the only fool stubborn enough to hide her. She stabbed my brother last night. You give her up, maybe we'll let you keep your land." Caleb's jaw flexed. His voice came out low and cutting. "Your brother laid his hands where he had no right. She defended herself. He got what was coming." A murmur rippled among the other 2 riders. They shifted uneasily in their saddles, glancing at each other. But the scarred man's face twisted with fury. His hand hovered over his gun, his knuckles white. Inside the house, Clara stood just behind the door, peering out through a crack. Her breath was shallow, her body trembling. She pressed her palm to her chest, clutching the memory of Caleb's words from the night before, "Don't pull it away." This time, she wasn't talking about the knife. She was talking about his courage, his stand, the shield he was willing to raise for her. Caleb's hand drifted to his revolver. His eyes burned into the scarred man's. "You're not taking her," he said, calm and steady as steel. "Not while I draw breath." The air turned heavy, the silence between them sharp enough to cut. The scarred man's sneer deepened. "Then you've made your choice." Caleb didn't flinch. He'd lived his life alone, convinced he had nothing left to lose. But now there was someone behind him, fragile yet fierce in her will to survive, and he felt something in him harden. He wasn't just standing for himself anymore. The riders shifted, the scarred man's hand twitched, and in that instant the world seemed to hold its breath. Clara whispered again to herself, her voice shaking but fierce, "Don't pull it away," as though the words themselves could bind him to his promise. The scarred man's pistol flashed from its holster. Caleb's revolver was already in his hand, steady as a heartbeat. The crack of the first gunshot split the morning, echoing off the hills, and the quiet ranch became a battlefield.